Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Film Odyssey podcast, where me and my brother trek through cinema on a quest to find the best film ever made. This season, we begin our journey by counting down the AFI Top 100 films of all time. So come and join us as we talk about Platoon. So, Randy, we finally got to a war movie.
Is this our first?
I'm pretty sure this is our first war movie. At least our first
direct.
real direct war movie. Yeah, because I guess Yankee Doodle Dandy vaguely counts.
Vaguely, yeah. Yeah.
So our first war movie. And this is a pretty banging war movie.
You think so?
Yeah, I really liked it.
I thought it was pretty good, but I'm not sure if it's like I'm raving about it or anything.
Really?
Yeah. It just seems like, I don't know. I don't really know.
You don't really know?
I don't know how I feel about this movie yet. I'm kind of mulling it over still, you know?
Okay. Well, I'll spoil the plot for everybody who was interested.
Yes.
So the film follows the new Army recruit, Private Chris Taylor, as he navigates his way through the Vietnam War. He's led on two sides by Sergeant Barnes, who's this scarred, grizzled, fucking hard-ass war vet. And on the other side is Sergeant Elias, played by Willem Dafoe, who's a lot more, I want to say, honorable or just kinder.
Yeah.
But it's really hard to say kind when he's, in the face of war, and he is also shown not to be one to fuck with.
Sure, but it's mostly just that, he kind of takes a more honorable, path, this is war, but we can still be, people, right?
Yeah.
Don't treat the, villagers who are, caught in between us, as, objects. They're people too. Mm-hmm. Just, things like that.
Whereas Barnes is completely off the deep end.
Off the deep end.
He is pure, these people are the enemy, and I am here for survival. That is it.
Yes.
Destruction, and that is it. And I feel that's kind of the whole point of the movie, is that, duality between Barnes and Elias, and Taylor, who's kind of stuck in between. Which, also, first Charlie Sheen movie on this list. Probably the only one.
Yeah, we're gonna be the only one.
Yeah, also, there's a lot of people in this fucking movie.
Yeah, there's a lot of people I recognize in this movie. I was like, hold up, isn't that?
Yeah, to go through the list for everybody who may not know, because I feel this is a movie that people tend to gloss over in their watch list. It has Charlie Sheen, Willem Dafoe, Keith David, Forrest Whitaker, fucking John C. McGinley. If you don't know who that is, that's Dr. Cox from fucking Scrubs. Yes. And then you got Johnny fucking Depp in this movie.
Yeah, but Johnny Depp, he's like a background character.
Yeah. Also, Tony Todd, Candyman himself. Dude, this movie is just packed to the fucking gills with people who were just about to become the most famous people on the planet.
I'm sure we've probably glossed over more actors who it's just we don't recognize, but if we clicked on their IMDb,
it'd be a list longer than my fucking arm.
Yeah, it'd be like, oh, okay, yeah, I remember this guy.
Yeah. Just thinking about, because this comes out in 1986.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is just after Nightmare on Elm Street came out, so I think Johnny Depp is still basically just known for Nightmare on Elm Street and 21 Jump Street. Charlie Sheen, I think he had a cameo in Ferris Bueller's Day Off, the year or two before, and I don't know any other thing he was in the early 80s.
Oh gosh, I have no idea.
Yeah, he gets famous way later. Honestly, most of these... Willem Dafoe, I can't think of a single film off the top of my head he did before this. I just can't. Which I know is bad movie nerd logic, but you gotta think, this is a crazy amalgamation of fantastic actors.
Yeah? Yeah, it really is. It's crazy how they got so many people on here who, seem like just amazing actors, like Charlie Sheen, Willem Dafoe. I mean, just those two already, Willem Dafoe, he's actually really, really good. And Charlie Sheen, I mean, he was an up-and-comer at the time.
And he's become kind of a meme.
Yeah, right? Kind of a meme, all the tiger blood and whatnot in 2.5 Men.
I made that joke as soon as he came on the screen. I'm like, are we going to see Charlie Sheen drink tiger blood to fight the Viet Cong? And then also, we have the actor playing Sergeant Barnes, Tom Berenger.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I've ever seen him in anything else. Granted, he's under a lot of scar makeup.
Yeah.
So if I saw him outside of it, I'd probably recognize him, but that guy is fucking great in this movie.
Yeah, he was really good.
Yeah, sorry to praise, the performances for so long, but they're really fucking good.
Yeah, most of them are pretty fucking good. But it's one of those things where I wasn't like blown away by any of them.
You didn't have a Meryl Streep moment?
Yeah.
There wasn't a Cagney in here?
Yeah, it wasn't one of those things where I was like, damn, like they're really like carrying this. It was more just like everybody was doing really well.
Everybody showed up to work that day.
Everybody really showed up to this movie, and it wasn't like, a couple of people were like really trying their hardest,
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure they were, but it's like one of those things where it's like, I saw everybody kind of being like that 90%, like 100%. Nobody here was at like 120%, nobody here was like above and beyond, where it's like, oh my god, well, where's the Oscar?
Well, I mean, speaking of Oscars, so here's the story of this film's production reception, because it is really interesting. Because the film was conceived when the writer and director Oliver Stone came back from his tour as an infantryman in the United States Army from Vietnam. And he basically wrote this in 1968 when he got home, as that was the first draft. But it took like 2 decades before he can actually get the film made. And it goes through like a bunch of drafts. In between, he becomes a pretty famous screenwriter in Hollywood. He's the guy that wrote Scarface, the Brian De Palma film. And off of that, and making some deals with Dino De Laurentiis, where he directs a film in South America. I believe it's called Salvador. And after he makes that, he gets Platoon made, right? Gets cleared for $6 million. And when it comes out, massive fucking hit. And I mean massive. It had a $6 million budget. It makes $140 million at the box office. It gets nothing but glowing reviews. Nothing but high praise from every critic around, saying it's like detailed, most accurate, like citing it as possibly the best depiction of Vietnam on film, because it's more or less based on his actual experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And parsing what I can is one of those things. A lot more of it is 1-for-1 retelling than complete bullshit for the screen. And even after that, when it goes to the award season, it wins 4 fucking Oscars, including Best Picture and Best Director. The movie was massive.
That's pretty big. That is a lot of praise for this movie.
Are you just not seeing it?
Well, it's not that I'm not seeing it. It's just that, like, I'm kind of like trying to gather up, like, what does this have versus like other Vietnam movies? Like,
I mean, we do get a few other Vietnam films on the list. Deer Hunter, Apocalypse Now, those are much higher on this list. This is the first one. But honestly, I look at this movie and it's almost one of those things where so many action movies and war movies we saw growing up really took points on this. And also, like, Tropic Thunder is literally like a parody of this film in some aspects.
Yes. But I think what I'm kind of like gathering up now is that Platoon, out of like the Vietnam movies, is the most realistic.
Yeah.
It's the one that like kind of shows it as is with the least bullshit. Because I mean, Deer Hunter and Apocalypse Now. Well, I don't know, because I haven't even seen these movies. But I'm assuming that they're a little more played up for the screen, like the whole like Russian roulette Deer Hunter scene. I know that scene.
Yes.
Like,
okay, so Deer Hunter was billed as a very realistic Vietnam movie by a Vietnam vet. Find out the director never served in Vietnam. Basically, most of the movie's kind of bullshit. It's a really good movie. I've seen it. But it's really hinged on the fact that you have Robert De Niro, Meryl Streep, and Christopher Walken shown the fuck up for work that day.
Okay.
And then Apocalypse Now, it's a Vietnam movie, but it's kind of an art film that's a retelling of Hearts of Darkness. It's a movie that is very abstractly talking about the war of Vietnam.
It's more using its themes to talk about this.
Yeah, it's more using its themes. This is a far more just realistic portrayal of being in Vietnam, being in the jungle. Just, this is what war is like for people who are in this situation.
All right, now I'm starting to like get there, where I'm more understanding the movie, where it's mostly just about like the people in it. How do you come to terms with what you're doing, and how do you like kind of have this like dichotomy of the war, where it's like, the completely like savage, where it's just you shoot to kill and they're the enemy and that's it, that's done, period. You don't think about it. And then that's like the Sergeant Barnes, and then the other side would be like the Sergeant Elias, where it's like, you can kind of respect yourself and the enemy in the war, you know? It's one of the things where it's more like that classical, you know, like knights fighting each other.
The classical military ideal.
Yes, the classical military ideal where, you know, you would meet the enemy on a field at a designated time, you know?
And you would just shoot it out.
And you would just shoot it out, you know? That kind of like old classical war type, like ideal of like, you know, we respect each other, you know, we are not simply savages here, you know.
We are men. And
we are
soldiers.
men.
I mean, I like that idea because this movie really does deal with dichotomy, two sides of basically the same coin. Yeah, Barnes and Elias are two sides of war. Elias is, yeah, I am here, I am fighting an enemy, and we will respect each other in the battlefield. We will meet and we will figure this out. And that's like almost an old ideology of what war was. And then Vietnam was so different.
So far beyond that.
And Barnes is like, I am not here to fight an enemy. I'm here to fucking survive. And any means necessary. Any suspicion is met with swift and hard consequences.
Another thing, too, is you can kind of see that in like the politics, right? In like the camp politics, as they call it, where Barnes is kind of, because he doesn't really care about anything, he doesn't really have like a moral compass, you would say.
Yeah.
So he's very easily able to like kind of like take control of like a hierarchy of like the military command there in their platoon, right? You know, the lieutenant basically just, even though he outranks Sergeant Barnes, he basically just takes whatever Sergeant Barnes does and does it.
Yeah.
It's basically like as if Sergeant Barnes is the like lieutenant's like superior, even though it's not, you know, because Sergeant Barnes just doesn't give a shit.
Yeah.
And Elias is kind of like ostracized by them because Elias kind of still has that like moral compass where he won't just do something because you tell him to. He'll only do it because it's right. You know, he's not gonna just, you know, he's not gonna just do whatever because it pleases the hierarchy of the platoon. You know, he's gonna do it because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah,
and it's why he's kind of like ostracized by Barnes and the rest of the hierarchy or the military hierarchy here, is because Barnes is willing to do whatever. He doesn't care.
It's really just an interesting play, and then you have Charlie Sheen's character Taylor just stuck in the middle. And
yeah, he's green. You know, he doesn't really get to say about anything.
No,
you know,
he's literally the shit duty. He is the FNG, as it were.
Yeah,
and having him being shown how these two guys run the platoon, and he is definitely on Elias' side at the beginning, and then once they're in the shit, he's back with Barnes.
It's kind of established at the beginning that he sees Barnes as kind of like this bigger-than-life figure.
Yeah.
He sees Barnes as like this war hero. But then as he stops being so brand new and like, you know, starts kind of going farther along in the war, he sees the flaws in Barnes and turns to Elias.
Yeah. You see Barnes and it's like, well, this is the guy. He's been shot 7 times. He's got all the battle scars, and this guy has been through the hardest shit, and he's still here. And then Taylor kind of sees, this is how you get to be like Barnes. You don't get shot this many times. You don't have those kind of scars without having to do the hardest, most vile shit to survive. And then you see Elias on the other side, who I want to talk about Elias's death scene, because I think that really encapsulates a very interesting moment, is because at that point in the movie, Elias and Barnes are at opposite ends. Elias is gonna try and get Barnes up as court-martial because he shot a bunch of civilians. And when he's running through the jungle and the two meet, and for a second, you know, Barnes holds the gun at him and then kind of lowers it, and Elias smiles, and then Elias
is
realizes,
like, finally, you know, somebody out, like, you know, I'm safe, I can, you know, get back to camp. And then he realizes what Barnes is out here to do.
And that moment, I just think...
That's not his death scene.
Well, his death scene is when he throws the arms up in the air, drops his knees, it's so good. But in that moment, I look at it and I'm like, even in that moment, Elias still thought Barnes had some honor. He still thought Barnes wouldn't shoot his own men.
So, the whole Barnes and Elias things, right? We can look at it like this, where Elias assumes that him, like, the people he fights with and the people he's fighting against, like, have that, like, reasonable mentality, right? Where they're logical actors.
Yes.
So, when he meets Barnes in the jungle, and he believes that Barnes is a logical actor. He's not going to shoot his own man.
Yeah.
Even though he's going to be probably court-martialed by that same guy. He's not going to shoot him because that would just be wrong. Why would you shoot your own fellow sergeant? But Barnes is not a logical actor.
And I think Barnes also assumes
nobody is a logical actor.
And I love that. I fucking dig on that shit in this movie, dude. It's fucking palatable. I love that dichotomy in film.
Well, also, this is not just a dichotomy in film. We're talking about war here. Like, this is something that easily comes up in all the, like, political discussions about wars. How do you assume what your opponent's going to do, you know? Are you going to assume they're going to be a logical actor? Maybe as a whole, but individually, you can't trust them.
Humans are messy and weird and crazy. And war in itself is like an illogical thing. But it's done as a logical action of power, and I love this movie. This movie's great.
And the Vietnam War is like a very complicated war. You know, it starts off as like like almost like a war of independence for Vietnam against the French, and then like it's backed by China, and then Vietnam kind of splinters into North Vietnam and South Vietnam. North Vietnam being like really heavily backed by China, and then South Vietnam would have been backed by the French, but they're kind of hands-off at this time, being like, you know, we'll support you, but like...
No troops on the ground.
Well, there some, but like, not many at all. You know, they're like, well, we're supposed to be leaving, like, the fuck? Like, we're not gonna stick around. And then, you know, America seeing, like, we're gonna have a communist takeover of, like, a country, you know, and we have that whole domino effect mentality. And so we're like, we have to go in and defend South Vietnam from North Vietnam because we don't want this country to become fully communist, because we think, you know, Vietnam goes down, then there goes Cambodia, there goes Laos, and there goes, you know, New Guinea, and there goes
the
Philippines,
domino effect theory, you
know,
of
who knows, you know, they're like, what if like Burma and then Bangladesh and then India will become communist, you know?
Randy spent a lot of time on the Vietnam history for this.
Not really, but like, you know, it's like, this is common stuff. Everybody knows that the United States were very, like, in with the domino effect. You know, one country's gonna turn communist and the next after that, because like the sphere of influence of communist China is gonna grow. But it was one of those things where they went in to fight, you know, this battle, which was basically just it wasn't to like conquer North Vietnam, it was just to protect South Vietnam from being overrun by the more powerful North Vietnam. And they just really didn't know when to stop, and so they didn't have a clear goal. You know, they wanted to reach some kind of ceasefire, which they did, and then the ceasefire was ended.
Yeah.
Very quickly afterwards by North Vietnam.
It's one of those things where it became a war of attrition incredibly fast.
Incredibly fast. And a war of attrition, you're outside power and they're an inside power, that's not going to go well for you. Especially in the environment that Vietnam is.
Yeah.
And it just kind of shows, like, this whole... Like, the new guys that show up in the movie, right? They don't know what's going on, like, why they're doing anything.
No.
They hardly even know how to, like, do anything. It's like a Charlie Sheen character says, like, nobody explains anything to you. Like, they tell you to take watch from these hours, right? And they hand you a scope and a clicker. And you don't know what any of these things do. And they go, yeah, click the thing 3 times, you know, look at the scope. If anybody shows up, you know, wake us up. That's about it. You know, I'm sure Charlie Sheen's character could, like, in that fight, right? In the very first fight that Charlie Sheen's in, he forgets to flip the safety on the claymores.
Yeah.
And he just forgot all about it because it was the first time he ever done it. Nobody explained it before then. You know, he only explained it once.
Yeah, and also, even in that fight, he wasn't even supposed to be the one on the claymores. He gave the watch over.
But the thing is, though, is that he gave the watch over to Junior? He gave the watch over to Junior, but he didn't give the claymore clicker over to Junior. You remember that?
Oh, yeah.
He only gave the scope over to Junior.
And Junior falls asleep
like Junior falls asleep in like 20 seconds. Like, yeah. He's freaking out.
I really like this movie. And I think it also comes with the fact that I'm also just fascinated by, like, the Vietnam War. I guess, do we want to get personal enough about this?
I mean, it's your podcast.
All right, cool. So, one of our relatives, our uncle, he was a combat medic in Vietnam.
He was a Navy medic that was attached to a Marine unit in Vietnam.
Yeah.
Don't know much more than that because, you know, he doesn't talk about Vietnam, obviously.
Yes. I am a grown-ass man. I have known that he was in the Vietnam since I was a small child. I do not have the guts to ask him anything at all about his experience. I've heard one secondhand story from my grandmother about it. He was on the edge of an outpost, I think. I think he was at like base camp, right? And he was on the edge of it. I think he was just walking around, and he sees out of the jungle line this giant black dude sprinting just across the field. And our uncle is just standing there. He's like, what the fuck? And then this guy, I don't actually know if he tackled him or if he just like jumped on top of him, but he threw him to the ground, and then a bunch of bombs, mortars, and everything goes off. And the only reason we know that's what happened is he explained how he got the scars on his back to my grandmother. And how this war, and watching this movie, and knowing that this is more or less just Oliver Stone's therapy, just going through Vietnam, right? And hearing a story, even secondhand about that, it's just...
It's incredible that this is real. How do you, people went through this.
Yes, and then it's like, how do you come to terms with that? I mean, there was another time when we were at Disneyland, God, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago. We're like really little. Our uncle's there, and they're like lowering the flag. It's about the rain. And they ask everybody, okay, all the veterans, please stand up as we lower the flag. And he's like, all right, goes over. He's standing next to like this 70-something-year-old World War II vet. And then across the way, he catches eyes with a guy that's about his age. And after it's done, they go and they talk to each other or whatever. And we're standing off to the side, and I see the guy my uncle's talking to just break down into tears. Our uncle taps him on the back, and then they shake hands, and that was it. They walked away. What were the words crossed over? What was it? Just a thing they looked in each other's eyes and they just fucking knew?
It's one of those things where you'll never be able to understand unless you were there. It's one of those like incredible things about people. It's just you will never understand unless you're there.
And I think that's why I really just...
It's fascinating really because you want to know.
Yeah, you want to know even though you don't want to know. It's the same thing where it's like, hey, my friend went into jail, and they ask, oh, what happened? And it's like, you don't want to know. Because you never want to know. Because the answer is either going to be disappointing or it's going to be something you'll never be able to forget. And watching this movie, it's Oliver Stone's basically his fucking therapy. He starts the first draft as soon as he comes home after serving as a combat infantryman in Vietnam. He saw combat. I think he came home with a Purple Heart. And I'm like, how much of this is bullshit? How much of this is just straight facts? Is this literally the closest we'll get to a true enough interpretation of the events without it being a documentary? Is that it?
Quite possibly. I mean, the only things that'll lean towards being like played up for Hollywood is like Sergeant Barnes.
Yeah.
Basically like Sergeant Barnes' character, not so much like how he acts, but like him like shooting Elias out by himself.
Yeah.
And like
the stuff that you can tell is played up for just cinematic drama.
Yeah. Or like Elias running out after being shot into the field and throwing up his arms as he's been being shot down by the Viet Cong.
That also one of the most iconic images in cinema, or at least in war films.
I mean, it's on the front of the box.
It is on the front of the fucking box. It's also the thing that's been parodied and memed in every Vietnam thing since.
Yeah.
What is it? I played fucking Black Ops like 10 years ago, and Frank Underwood did the same damn thing. I swear to God.
But I mean, that's it's a powerful scene where Elias somehow survives being shot by Barnes, and he's running out in front of the surge of the Viet Cong. They were basically surging towards the Americans' position, but the Americans have already gotten a chopper and left, right?
Yeah.
But they're surging to take all this land, for themselves, right? And Elias is kind of at the front of them, running away from them, and he somehow survived the shots by Sergeant Barnes. And I don't know if Charlie Sheen's character recognizes him or just sees a soldier down there alone.
I want to say because he says it's Elias.
No, he doesn't.
Are you sure?
He doesn't. The way he looks at Sergeant Barnes afterwards makes it think that he wasn't sure who it was, but he had a hunch type of thing.
I just look at that sequence and I'm sitting there and I'm like, just please make it Willem Dafoe. Please make it Elias.
I know, right? I'm just like, land the helicopter, save him.
Come on.
But they can't land the helicopter. There's hundreds of Viet Cong there, They got to get out. And Elias is just another casualty.
And that's the thing, that's
the
another
story
thing
will
that
never be told.
That's another thing about all these war movies and this movie in particular, and I guess that's one of those things where it's very true to life, is, there's these people, you get attached to them, and suddenly they're just dead. They're gone.
Yeah, just another casualty. I mean, it's like the scene with the villagers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they kill like 4 or 5 of these people.
Yeah.
And, it's one of those things where Sergeant Barnes doesn't fucking care.
Yeah.
But like Elias and Chris Taylor, like, they care. They're like, these are people, but Barnes is like, these aren't people, they're Vietnamese.
They're the enemy. Just, burn the village, we'll blow up their shit, and then we're done.
Yeah, and they eventually, like, they escort all of, like, the villagers, like, out of the village after they burn it down and whatnot. And it's like, I don't know what the fuck they do with them after that. Like, they have, like, evacuated, like, a whole village, and they burned all their, like, everything that these people have ever known.
Yeah, do they just go to, like, a prison? Do they just go to a camp? Do
they can't all be POWs? Yeah, like are they just, suddenly, you're relocated to South Vietnam, get fucked, like... But it's one of those things where it's like, maybe Charlie Sheen's character will lose sleep about that. Maybe Elias's character will lose sleep about that. But Barnes isn't gonna fuck. Barnes is gonna drink a 5th of whiskey and go sleep, like, every other night.
Yeah.
After he just shot some old lady, just in front of everybody.
Yeah, did not give a fuck.
And it's one of those things where it's, you have to think about the mentality of these, of, like, the people, like, because it's like, it's not like Barnes has been there maybe Barnes has been like that since day one. Maybe he hasn't. Maybe, like, Vietnam did this to him, and this is, like, him kind of lashing back at like, the war, like, the war has done this to him, but he's gonna do this back to them.
I mean, looking at the two characters of Barnes and Elias, because that's what this movie's about, right? It's these two warring philosophies and ideologies and of war. It's like, Barnes wears the war on his face. Like, literally, he's covered in scars, covered in battle wounds. And Elias seems to have, like, internalized it a lot more. I think they're both equally fucked by this situation.
I mean, Elias has been there for 3 years, supposedly.
At least, because he made a mention that he knew what he was fighting for in '65, but he has no idea what he's fighting for now.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have Barnes, and I'm like, I have no idea. At roughly the same time, if I'd have to take a shot. Maybe a little longer, but it's like, what exactly happened to Barnes? I mean, they never explain where he got the scars, other than their war wounds, but that looks like something that, like, all that shrapnel stuff or whatever, that looks like something that somebody did to him? I don't know. It's just, I just love the visuals of this movie and how...
he fell in a bramble patch when he was a kid.
Dude, could you imagine that's what it is? They're just
like that happens though, like, when people like see like somebody has like some scars or like, they'll be missing an eye and be like, whoa dude, were you in some shit? And it's like, nah dog, like, I got hit in the eye by a baseball when I was a kid and that was it,
Yeah. What is it? One of our buddies' aunts or uncles, I think, is like missing 2 fingers on one hand, and they're just like, what happened, man? He's like, I held a firecracker too long. Yep, that shit fucking happens.
Yeah, these things happen. But it's there for you to assume it happened in Vietnam, right? That, like, Barnes has seen the shit.
Exactly.
He's been in the shit.
And also, like, the imagery of the movie, when you see it's, like, how Barnes's squad and how Elias's squads, they're in 2 different worlds. Elias's is, like, they're smoking weed, they're drinking, they're, like, dancing, playing Motown, and Barnes's is, like, they're gambling, they're like, drinking, but it's, like, Barnes's squad is all above ground, and all of Elias's stuff is all like underground.
Yeah, they're in like a little underground bunker where they smoke pot and listen to White Rabbit.
Yeah, and I just like how there's just this so much separation between these two, and it's all there visually, philosophically.
It could be a commentary on how the political, like, military political hierarchy is, like, supposed to be disconnected from the war, right?
Yeah.
They're supposed to be disconnected from the people that actually fight it. Barnes is disconnected from his own platoon in, like, that mental way, He doesn't see what they see. And it could be a commentary on that, like, the hierarchy of this platoon sees themselves as above their own platoon, while, like, the people that are, like, Elias sees himself as one within the platoon, he is part of them.
Yeah. And I mean, speaking of the military hierarchy, we have the Lieutenant Wolf.
Yeah.
And he is negative effectual, right? He is not effective at all. And I watch that character, and that's obviously a commentary about exactly what you said, political, like, military hierarchy, right? He's this guy who's supposed to be at the top of the food chain in the film we're seeing, right? But he can't lead these people. He doesn't know what's really going on. He just defers everything to Barnes. Defers everything to the sergeant, the guy that's actually been in there.
Yeah, he barely gives any orders to, like, overrule anything Barnes says. Like, barely in the movie. Like, I think once or twice.
Yeah. And then you have the guy that's leading the platoon, right? But he's always at base camp, right? He's on the phone, he's at base camp, that's his job. And it's like, there's so many levels of disconnection from what's actually happening in the jungle, in the war, versus the people who are supposed to be running it. And it's like, watching this as it dilutes so much, back in Washington, the implication of this movie, they have next to zero idea as to what the fuck to do.
Yeah. While you're fighting an enemy who's at home.
Yeah.
It's one of those things about war, where it's, like going to somebody's like fighting a war in like some country's like hometown and expecting to win, you have to be at like 5-1 odds,
Yeah, and it's
like World War it's like, to take the example of like World War II, right? Mm-hmm. The Germans were fighting on like basically like 3 fucking fronts,
Yeah, that's basically why it was.
That's how you're able.
Easy, but that's why it was so easy.
It was successful, you know, because you could like fighting them on 3 fronts, because we fought them in North Africa, in West and Eastern Europe. That's how you're able to roll into Berlin.
Yeah,
but we're just fighting on one front from South Vietnam going north. You're gonna get messed up. That's the way it goes.
Yeah, and it's
one of those things where it's like the people back in Washington were just like, just make it happen. Just make it happen.
Just smooth it over in the second update and we'll figure it out later.
And it's just like, these things just don't
Washington
happen.
had the Bethesda idea of, we'll fix it in an update. Just play the game and we'll figure it out later.
We'll figure it out later. Just get the troops there and we'll figure it out.
Yeah, and so that's our discussion about the Vietnam War, but
also,
this movie...
Well, here, like, another thing, though, is, like, the disconnect between, like, the soldiers there and then the people back home, right? Like, the citizens back home, that disconnect as well.
Oh, yeah.
Where it's just, like, some of these people were drafted, some volunteered, and then they come home after having this horrific experience, and the United States citizenry, half of them don't even see them as people.
Yeah.
They just see them as warmongers,
It's one of those things where even in the movie, when they find out that Taylor, he enlisted, he wasn't drafted, and everybody's like, why the fuck would you do that?
Why the fuck would you do that?
And he's talking about all this stuff. He's like, well, my grandfather fought in World War One, my dad
That's
in World War II.
That's not the explanation he gives them. The explanation he gives them is that, I see, like, all these, like, poor people go off to fight, and I'm, like, a rich kid, why don't I go out to fight as well? Like, everybody should. Equally,
And then you have Keith David, the King character. He keeps making a point where, kind of hitting home on a lot of political discourse, where it's like, rich people always shit on poor people, man. You gotta learn this. It's happened in the past, it'll happen now, and it'll happen in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And war is just a way to thin out the poor. And I'm like,
well, he doesn't say that.
Not exactly that, but I'm like, Keith David, you're speaking too much truth right now. You calm the fuck down.
These are
speaking
just
hard facts, though.
These are just like the truths of war. It's like, you don't have like freaking like Donald Trump Jr. going to war in freaking Afghanistan. Like the only like example is like who it was one of the British princes, Prince
Henry.
I don't remember which one, but one of them went to like war in Afghanistan, right?
Yeah, but
it's one of these things where it's like, it's just not a thing, It's like it barely ever fucking happens. Where it's like you hear of like somebody who's already born with a silver spoon in their mouth and all that good stuff, actually goes off to war. Charlie Sheen's character, does that, and it's one of those things where he does that as kind of like a self-righteous, like noble cause. Like, oh, I will go there and usher out the poor from their woes in fucking Vietnam. You know?
Like what the fuck, dude?
But well, I'm sure it wasn't like that, like self-righteous, you know. But it's usually one of these things, and he gets there and he realizes he's just another fucking grunt, Like they don't give a fuck about him.
Yeah, they don't care. They don't really care why you're here. The only reason they asked him is because they needed something to talk about as they're shoveling literal shit.
Mm-hmm.
And then once they get there, all any of them can really talk about is how many days until you're home.
Yeah,
King's
that's a common theme of the movie.
King's like 10 days, and then I'm out of here. And also, I fist pumped a little bit when King got on the helicopter, and he's like, "I'm going home." Like you deserve to go home without being maimed. You're the fucking man. Also, I just love Keith David. He's great in The Thing, great in They Live. Guys, great. But
maybe we could go over a couple of like scenes from the movie that we really liked.
Yeah. So what about you? What's your, I guess, top scene?
My top scene is basically like the fight at the end. Like that's the best scene in the movie because it just shows how they're like so totally unprepared.
Yeah.
For the enemy's advancement, you know. It all starts with the scene where the lieutenant is telling the person who takes over Elias's unit, like, hey, you have to put up foxholes from here to there, you know, and get it done. He goes, well, I only have like 5 men. He's like, well, that's tough shit. You're gonna have to do it anyway. And
he's like, they're just gonna walk through.
He's gonna be like, for me to cover that, put foxholes that cover that distance, they're gonna have enough space between my men to just walk an entire division through. And he goes like, I don't want to hear it. Just fucking do it.
Yeah, we are not prepared. We are understaffed. Just get it the fuck over with.
And this is another commentary on like the lieutenant doesn't care. Just get it fucking done. But the now I guess he's a sergeant now.
Yeah.
You know, he's just like, well, I can't fucking do it. Like, no matter how much you tell me to just get it done, it can't be done.
Yes. I simply can't.
But the lieutenant, I don't want to hear it. You know, it's one of these things where it's just like, these things happen all the time in war, you know? Get it done. I can't get it done. We'll do it anyway. How? You know?
Yeah, and then when the battle finally, like, actually starts, and you just see Taylor just turn the fuck on.
Yeah, well, basically what happens is the fight breaks out, you know? And Taylor and his foxhole with, I don't remember the character's name, Francis, I think?
I think so, yeah, it's Francis.
Like, they see, like, the battle, like, breaking out in the distance. And this is also one of the crazy things about Vietnam, is you remember the flare on the balloon, or on the parachute, right?
Yeah.
Like, that was one of the craziest things about Vietnam, is, like, trying to get visibility at night.
It was basically fucking impossible, because the jungle was so dense.
Well, they used shit like the flare on the parachute, right? And that shit is fucking crazy. It's scary. Because it's like everything that the flare sees is just completely whitewashed out, you know?
Yeah.
And any little, like, protrusion from the tree line is just, like, instantly, like, you can just see it like that. And it's the dead of fucking night. So you only get, like, a couple of, like, 10 seconds of that, you know? Or, like, 20 seconds. And just one of these really scary things about Vietnam where something like that happens, you know? And it suddenly goes from being, like, complete, like, nearly pitch black night, you know? Because it's just you and the stars, right? To being like bright as fucking day.
Yeah.
And
it's suddenly realizing there's just hundreds of fucking dudes just around you.
Well, also because like when that happens, you know people are looking for your position, but you also know that you want to look for their position. So it creates this kind of thing where you're both looking for each other, but you don't want to expose yourselves. And it also is, like, great for cinematography purposes.
It looks so good.
It looks so fucking cool.
Oh my god, dude. I was watching it and I'm like, did they put, like, a blue tint on this shit? And they're like, no, that's just the phosphorus. Oh my god, this looks fucking palatable.
Yeah, like, it makes that scene look fucking great.
Yeah.
With the flare. But then, so the flare goes down, right? And then the fight breaks out. You know, there's explosions, there's gunfire, but Taylor can't see any of it, you know? It's like there's just, like, bullets and like tracer rounds, and I don't even know why are there tracer rounds in the movie. I don't know why.
Cinematography, it looks cool.
It looks fucking cool. But so there's like, you know, all this gunfire happening, but I can't see shit, right? Because the flare's already gone down. There's fucking nothing I can see. And then somebody, I don't remember who, like runs into their like trench and like tells them like shit's going down, get the fuck out of here. And then there's
a fucking whole platoon behind me.
Yeah, he's like, there's a whole division of guys behind me, get the fuck out of here. And he just books it, but Taylor's just kind of looks at Francis, and Francis is like, should we go? And Taylor's like, I'm gonna stay, you can do whatever you want.
And I'm like, Jesus fucking Christ.
And so they're kind of like battling it out for a little bit. And then there's like, they hear the Viet Cong speaking, right? They can hear it. It's that close.
Yeah.
And then Taylor kind of like reasons, and this is like a crazy thing because he doesn't know what the fuck the guy's saying.
Yeah, it's made apparent only Johnny Depp speaks Vietnamese in this movie.
Yes, and so Taylor kind of reasons like they're about to blow us up. You know, he can hear them speaking and not shooting at them. That means that they're gonna like blow up our foxhole because it's like a little mini bunker, you know.
Yeah.
And so he like tries to leave the foxhole with Francis, but Francis is kind of like stunned in fear. He doesn't know what the fuck to do.
He's just like, do I get out of here and just get fucking shot? Do I stay in and just get blown up? Like, what the fuck's happening? So
Taylor like drags Francis out of there. They run away to like a little embankment nearby. Their foxhole gets blown up. And then, this is where Taylor, Charlie Sheen's character, kind of sees, like, the Viet Cong, like, advancing almost past them. They're, like, jumping at the foxhole, running past them, like, towards, like, the other, soldiers' positions. And he kind of realizes this thing where he's, like, accidentally flanked them. And he just kind of, like, sees it in the moment, like, oh, shit, I could do something here. I could, like, make a difference in this fight. And he just does it. And then he just doesn't stop.
In that moment, he goes with Barnes in Barnes's mentality of the war. He's like, I have a position. I'm going for it. Well, if he's standing there, he would have been fine. They would have just kept walking.
What do you mean?
If he just stayed with Francis, they could have held position there and just kept walking. But he just gets up, shoots them down, jumps in the foxhole, keeps shooting, jumps out, just charges.
I think you're missing it, right? Because Elias does the same thing earlier in the movie. Mm-hmm. So how could that be Barnes' mentality? Look. He is using Elias's mentality here because he's fighting smart. He's thinking about what the enemy is going to do, right? He's thinking that the enemy is logical actors, right? They blew up the foxhole, they're going to inspect it and move on, right?
You know what? I think you're right. Because I think I keep going. I think I'm just getting mixed up because it's like, oh, Barnes is like brutality and Elias is not. But I'm like, no, they're both brutal.
They're both soldiers, right? They're both there to shoot other people.
Yeah.
It's just, Barnes doesn't think they're people and Elias does.
Right, I can see that point to you. I got myself.
Yeah, but it's like one of those things where you got to like really think about it. Really think about what they're doing and like how that relates to like which character, right? It's one of these things where it's like Barnes probably would have just either left, right? Because he's seen almost as like kind of like a coward sometimes, where it's just like he's just trying to survive, right?
Yeah,
and he would have probably either just returned fire or left. But what Taylor does is he like kind of like regroups himself nearby, and then he sees like the Viet Cong like get distracted by the foxhole they just blew up, right? They're inspecting it for any like casualties or any bodies or whatever. I guess it wouldn't be casualties, for any hits.
Yeah. How many hit markers did I get?
Yeah, exactly. And Taylor sees this opportunity, he just like turns it, just goes, and he just runs up there and like mows down like 6 or 7 guys.
Yeah.
In like a 20-round magazine or the fuck is in an M16,
Right. Jumps in the foxhole. Francis comes up behind him, starts doing cover, and they just start
laying waste.
He just turns on. He turns into fucking
Taylor
Rambo.
starts like running around and shit, like sprinting through the forest, shooting people. And
it's like it's the middle of the fucking night.
You can't see fucking shit, but it's also like one of these things that like goes to his benefit. Like the Viet Congs can't see shit either,
Yeah, and they're not expecting one dude to just appear out of fucking nowhere and just mow them down.
Be in the midst of them, and you see also
Sergeant Red.
No. Dr. Cox. What the fuck is his name?
Sergeant O'Neill.
Sergeant O'Neill, the guy that plays Dr. Cox on Scrubs. You see him kind of like, he's in like a foxhole, right? And the enemy's about to like overtake him, Not so much as like they're gonna like, they're gonna like, shoot him out or like bomb his position, but they're gonna like literally like overrun his position.
They're just gonna walk over his fucking foxhole.
Walk over his foxhole, and he like grabs I guess like the person that was in the foxhole with him, or
like a Viet Cong or somebody dead.
Somebody that's dead, like right there next to him, like hides under their body, right? And this whole sequence, and then it's like, it flashes over to the like commanders, right? You have like the Lieutenant Wolf, and you also have like the legit commander of the whole platoon. And you have them like talking on the radio to all the different positions, and how, like, even them, they're, like, completely overrun. They set up this huge perimeter around them, right? And it just gets completely overrun, and you have the, Lieutenant Wolf, he's, like, trying to, like, he's, like, kind of, like, passively, like, kind of being, like, people are telling him what's going on, he's like, yeah, go do that, and he's, like, trying to catch people on the radio, And the Viet Cong, like, this one Viet Cong, like, makes it through the line and, like, takes a grenade and, like, suicide bombs, like, Lieutenant Wolf's position, his, like, little command post.
Yeah.
And the other commander, like, sees that happen and goes, like, well, shit, I don't want to have that happen to me, and calls in, like, an entire firebombing of, like, his whole perimeter. Where all the foxholes used to be, fucking bomb them.
He's like, burn the entire perimeter around us.
He basically, he goes, we're gonna fight, we're already fucking dead. Just burn the place down.
Yeah. He's like, if you firebomb it, it'll at least cut their line enough to where maybe we can, like, find a way out. Or we can hide. Or something.
Some fucking anything. We're about to fucking die, right? It's like the, you know, they ask him for, like, what coordinates to, like, bomb, and he's like, my perimeter. You know, he's like, my position, you know, on my position. You know, it's one of the things where it's just crazy, you know? It's just like, you know, that's an order, you know? And he tells the guy, like, that's my decision. You know, you don't get to second guess me. That's my decision. If I say to bomb on my position, you fucking bomb on my position.
And then
they do.
Yeah.
And then this is, like, the final bit. I kind of feel the final bit with, like, Barnes and Taylor's, like, its own thing. So I'll, like, kind of exclude that from this. But that whole thing of how they're, like, completely overrun and all the, like, little things that happen, you know, it's kind of, like, my favorite part of the movie. It's just so
It's the microcosm of this film and the Vietnam War. It's all the themes of the film almost distilled down. Mm-hmm. It is a fantastic scene.
You know, you can see kind of, like, Taylor kind of, like, taking up the mantle of Elias, because Elias's thing earlier in the movie that, like, ends up getting him killed is that he wants to flank the enemy, right? And, like, stop them from getting reinforced so that they can maybe do something, since, like, you know, his, everybody else in his platoon is basically pinned down, right? And so they're going to flank the enemy, stop them from being able to be reinforced, and, like, kind of, like, do that, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, what does Taylor do? He flanks the enemy and stops them from being able to reinforce.
Yeah.
I mean, that's basically what happens later on in the movie. He basically takes up Elias's mantle in, like, more ways than one. You know, this whole like, idea of taking up the mantle from Elias, you know. Both, like, on the battlefield and his mentality. But he also gets revenge.
He does. Good revenge scene?
It was good.
It
was good. It was one of those things where it's, like, short and sweet and, well, like, not short and sweet, but short and brutal, just like the Vietnam War.
Yeah. It's one of those things where it's like, you know, Barnes is just, like, rolls over, looks at him, and is like, yeah, just kill me. And he's like, he fucking obliges.
Mm-hmm.
He's just
that was an order.
That was an order. It's over.
Well, he doesn't say that was an order. I should, for anybody that hasn't seen the movie, he doesn't say that, you know. He just looks at him, because earlier on in the movie, Taylor does try and kill Sergeant Barnes in, like, their
bunks or barracks or whatever.
Yeah, and they're, like, barracks, you know, and, like, nobody helps him do it. And Barnes just kind of, like, his, like, pussy, and, like, leaves. And, you know, Barnes is basically assuming that, you know, that Taylor doesn't have the spine to fucking do it, so he just do it, you know. And first, he tells him to go get him a medic. Then, when Barnes is just, or when Taylor's just standing there, Barnes is just like, do it, you know? Because Barnes' character, he doesn't think anybody has any fucking spine. Yeah. You know, Lieutenant didn't even have any spine to him, and he outranks him.
And
then
he
Taylor's,
gets God.
He gets Guy, you know?
Man, that whole end section is just so good. It's just so good.
Yeah.
I think my personal favorite is the battle sequence right before Elias's death. Yeah, because that one is like, it's like right after they had the whole conflict where it's just like, you know, hey, Elias is gonna put Barnes up for a court-martial, that stuff, and then they're in the shit, and then the two of them are kind of working together, but then it's like, you can see Barnes is almost intentionally just trying to get Elias isolated in that sequence. And the action going on is so good. It's the first time we really see Charlie Sheen's character, Taylor, like, kill somebody, actually, like engage in the brutality of the war, and you see, like, everybody else, like, how they are immediately just surprised.
Yeah.
They're just like, how are we ambushed? How are we overrun? Or how are we just, like, not completely in control of the situation? They're screaming. There's gunfire going everywhere. Elias makes a point. It's like, look, they have us in a fucking crossfire. It's fucking over unless we, like, flank them. And he's like, well, if I do that, don't shoot at me, shoot somewhere else, just don't shoot in that fucking direction. And I'm like, there's so much confusion going on. There's so much just action.
And they end up bombing them fucking selves with the artillery, right?
Exactly. And that's that whole moment, it's the ending of the film, but it's like the preamble. And it also, not only the preamble, it leads up to probably like the confrontation between Barnes and Elias, and in the jungle, no words are spoken, just the look. Lowers the gun, smile, loses the smile, gun comes back up, and that's it. I love that whole sequence. That is so good to me, just because
that's like the Oscar clip sequence, you know?
Yeah, honestly, that's probably why, because I'm a pretentious fuck. But I really like it. I really think it's good. And also the action in this film is very good.
Very, very good.
Very good. And it's weird, like, it's a war drama, but war films are action films, kind of, right?
Well, just they are.
Yeah. So I really like this movie.
It's really good, but, you know, I'm not sure it's going to be, like, creeping into my top 3 or anything. It's just one of these things where it's like, you know, it's one of the reasons why I didn't rate, like, The French Connection very highly, is because it's, like, it's showing it as is, you know? It's real. It's just there.
It's gritty.
It's gritty, you know? And it's one of these things where it's just, like, telling these, like, real stories doesn't give your film the ability to just kind of, like, reach these, like, new heights. Because you are trying to... You're... I mean, I don't want to say anything, like, too bad here, but, like, you're restraining yourself by trying to tell a real story.
It's one of those things where...
it's very admirable.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very glad that Oliver Stone did this. I wouldn't have him do it any other way. I wouldn't have him compromise his story for, you know, views or clicks or a better spot on the AFI. Like, I would always love him to tell his story as he told it. But it's just one of these things where it's like, you know, the more fictional stories do tend to be.
Yeah. It's one of those things
they
where
have
it's
more
like,
leeway.
It's one of those things where you're watching it and you're just like, can I get a little bit more of the entertainment factor a little bit?
Well, I mean, it's a very entertaining movie, you know, but it's just one of these things where it's just real, you know? Like, the one guy tries to get out of the movie by claiming he has trench foot.
Yeah, and he just sprayed his foot up with fucking mosquito repellent, right?
Like, yeah, something like that.
Oh, and at the end, when, you know, the battle's finally... After everything's overrun, it's like the next morning, Junior crawls out of the foxhole and he's like, shit, nobody's around. Okay, and he stabs himself in the leg to get a Purple Heart to go home.
Oh, shit, I didn't even notice that.
Yeah.
I wonder why the fuck he stabbed himself in the leg, but...
As soon as
to give himself a Purple Heart so he can go home.
Yeah, and, like, that's a thing a lot of these guys... I mean, that's a thing people do in war, you know, and they're in too deep. They're just like, okay, wait till I'm alone. Maybe there's an ambush. Just shoot myself in the leg or in the foot or something like that. And that's Purple Heart. I go home.
Tons of people have shot themselves in the foot in wartime, thinking that'll get them home.
Yeah, no, you gotta lose like a couple toes to get sent home.
Well, it's just one of those things where it's like some people don't get sent home for shooting themselves in the foot. You know, it's one of these things where, you know, it all depends on who's there, you know, who do you report to, you know, what do the doctors say about it? But, you know, since this was a huge battle, you know, Junior can stab himself in the leg, nobody will be none the wiser. You know, it's one of these things where it's more...
His whole platoon is basically fucking gone.
Gone, you know.
Yeah.
There's like, you know, a dozen people left or something like that out of the whole platoon.
Mm-hmm. It's crazy because even those things where it's a single moment, and I'm like, that's another just realistic aspect of this movie that I think just adds on to it. There's so many things that just add on and add on and add on to this movie that I think just make it so good. I think it's one of those movies where it really clicked for me, but maybe not super clicked for you.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was really good.
Yeah.
But it's just one of these things where it's, you know, maybe I'm coming down like too harsh on this movie, but like really, I think it's very good. Like, I'm not gonna rate it in like my bottom, you know, 5 or whatever.
Oh yeah.
But it's just like, you know, I've seen better movies on this list so far. Like, that's the way it goes.
I mean, yeah, it is the way it goes. I will say this is. I wouldn't say this is gonna be my number 1 when we get to the next whatever, but I don't think it's gonna be in my bottom 10. It'll probably be in my top 10 somewhere like along those lines. I really dug it, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I feel kind of the same way, but it's just kind of one of those things where, well, like, I'm probably gonna watch Apocalypse Now, and I'm gonna be like, yeah, Apocalypse Now, like, way better.
I mean, But
Platoon was very, very good. And I loved that Oliver Stone was able to tell his story the way he wanted to, you know, and have it be so successful. Win Best Director, Best Picture.
Yeah. It basically gave him all the good graces he could possibly have. And he went on to make JFK and Natural Born Killers, all those. And I mean, you know, I really dig this movie.
It was good. It was really, really good. The acting was good. Action was good. I mean, there's like a lot of like little things we didn't talk about, like when they find the bunker and it's booby trapped.
Yeah.
And like the one guy dies, the other guy goes missing.
That whole build up where he's just poking around in that like little bunker thing, just like,
and like Willem Dafoe's character, he like flanks the bunker by like going into it basically.
Yeah, he goes into what are they called? Like the tunnels?
Yeah.
Yeah, and he goes in there and he accidentally flanks them, and they're like, "Oh, what the fuck is a guy there?" And he starts shooting, and it's really good sequences in this movie. And I guess we both agree for the AFI spot definitely stays.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's gonna stay on the list.
It goes up, down, over and out.
I'm thinking it stays about the same place. Honestly, this is the first movie where I'm just kind of like, yeah, that's fine where it is.
You're just.
Well, I guess I probably thought that about Toy Story 2.
This is one of those movies where you're like, no strong opinions up or down, but definitely stays.
Yeah, the movie is definitely worth its weight on this list. And it's just a good movie, you know, really kind of realistic portrayal. It's like I feel a lot the same about this movie as I did like Spike Lee joint.
Do the Right Thing.
Do the Right Thing. I feel a lot the same about this movie than I did Do the Right Thing, because they're both like, even though Do the Right Thing is like completely fictional, you know, but it's just trying to portray something real, you know, and trying to portray it as realistically as possible without being like a freaking documentary. You know, Platoon does take some, you know, license with like the whole interactions between Taylor and Barnes. Yeah, but you know, who's to say that didn't actually happen in Vietnam? You know, crazy shit did happen all the time.
But yeah, so I would very much recommend people watch this movie.
Is there anything else you want to talk about for it?
Nothing crazy off the top of my head. Do you have anything crazy you want to say about it? Anything you've been ruminating on? Because I mean, I think I could praise this movie for a lot of things. Cinematography is great. The sound design in this is fantastic. The direction and the action sequences is so good, and the dramatic sequences is so good. I think the camera in this movie is incredibly vital. I think Oliver Stone picks his shots perfectly.
Well, something we haven't mentioned yet is like the suspense, right? Right before something's about to break out.
Oh my god.
You know, it gets real suspenseful. It's like
the first ambush sequence when it's in the middle of the night and Charlie Sheen starts seeing
he's the only one awake.
Only one awake. He starts seeing those guys approaching and the sound just comes out and you just hear a heartbeat. And it's just his eyes flashing between his gun and flashing between the claymores.
Yeah, the gun, the claymores, and the enemy. Because like he can see them. So if he makes any sudden move, they'll be able to see him, right? It's one of those things where it's like, do I move? Are they just going to like patrol past us? There's no way they're just going to patrol past us. I have to do something. What am I going to do? And just kind of freezing up the moment.
And he's just like, is there anybody else awake? Does anybody else see this?
Yeah, he
do I have any backup?
Looks at everybody else and they're all asleep and he's just like, what the fuck am I going to do?
So good. Mm-hmm. So good.
And also, like, you know, when they roll up to the ambush later in the movie, right?
Yeah.
Where they're, like, completely fucking ambush out of... They had, like, no idea. It's like you know, because I'm, like, a very observant watcher, you know, they're walking through the forest, and I'm like, that clearing is a little too good. It's a little too good of a clearing.
It's a little too clean.
Where's all the brush?
Yeah, because everything, even the set design in this, everything up to that, you're just like, the jungle's so fucking thick.
Yeah, there's
everywhere.
At least brush somewhere, you know?
And then they walk into this, I'm like, wait, there's just, like, leaves on the ground. And a couple of trees with a really, like, well-spaced apart. Oh, what's happening?
This is an ambush. I'm like, they're about to get ambushed. And then they get ambushed. I'm like, fucking, yeah, goddamn right, you got ambushed.
Yeah. Another crazy thing about this movie is, speaking of, you know, the brush and all that stuff, it was filmed in the Philippines.
Yeah, most Vietnam movies
are from the Philippines, yeah. But another thing is the entire cast was put through military training.
Oh, really?
Like actual, like the military training you would do if you joined the Army, the Marines, all that stuff. Except for Charlie Sheen, or he was done separate from the rest of the cast. So when he came in, he would feel alienated. He would know what to do, but he didn't know how everybody else learned to do it.
Yeah, because everybody else is kind of established as being there before him, so he's the new guy in the group, and he feels probably kind of ostracized because everybody else there has already this kind of camaraderie between them from their shared experience.
Yeah, but they did like the real shit.
Yeah.
I believe the coordinator for that was an actual Marine sergeant who served in Vietnam, and he had the guys do real 24-hour shifts, all that stuff, or watches, and he would try and ambush them. And he would, they're a bunch of these trained actors in the middle of the fucking Philippines jungle. They're okay, whatever. And then this fucking Green Beret would appear out of nowhere and fucking slap one of them in the middle of the night. And he's what the fuck was that? He's that right there? You'd be dead. And then he just disappears into the bush like Homer Simpson. But that kind of super intense military training and all that stuff for a role is something that is admirable, and obviously Oliver Stone wanted it because that's, get this movie as close to realistic as humanly possible. But I keep thinking about Tropic Thunder, and I'm they're making fun of it in Tropic Thunder. I'm sorry, Tropic Thunder is one of those movies we've talked about outside of this podcast a lot as being this
kind of underrated and a movie that wouldn't be as viable now.
Yeah, and it's also a movie where it's just probably the most poignant middle finger to Hollywood culture and filmmaking as possible. And I feel it takes aim at this movie, kind of, because a lot of it, I guess it's just because it's a Vietnam movie and it's taking a lot of iconography of Platoon.
Well, it did not just this movie, it also Apocalypse Now.
Probably Saving Private Ryan somewhere splashed in there.
Yeah.
All these big, bloated war movie kind of things. But this isn't really that bloated. This is a $6 million budget. And I feel you're seeing the entire budget on screen.
Oh gosh, yes.
Yeah, there's no way those battle scenes and no way all those foxholes, they basically look like they built an entire military base in the middle of the fucking jungle.
Mm-hmm.
Every dime's on screen. But yeah, so.
Yeah, I thought the suspense was pretty good.
Yeah. The suspense was great.
To be. And yeah, the action was great, and the movie's pretty good.
Yeah.
I give it a thumbs up. This is a movie I can recommend people to watch, actually.
Yeah, usually we don't get a lot of those very often.
Usually the movies are kind of a little too different to
really recommend
recommend people. But you could watch this movie just like a war movie, and it's good.
Yeah,
watch it.
It just works.
It's kind of sad that's kind of the war movies is just a movie you can just watch, even though these are movies about real wars where horrible things happen.
Yeah,
but you can just just sit down and watch a war movie like nothing happened.
Yeah,
the Vietnam War is just a fictional war,
dude. And it's and that's so crazy because I'm there are still non-vets very much alive, probably in your life. Somebody you have met in your life is probably a Vietnam vet.
Mm-hmm. If you're an American, you've probably met at least one Vietnam vet in your life. At least.
Even if pretty decent odds you're related to one somewhere.
Yes. And it's just one of these things where the further we get away from the war, that when it actually happened, the more it'll become fictionalized,
Yeah, it's the thing with a lot of movies now that do that with World War I, because World War I is now
over 100
years old, and it's there's a lot of poetic license and very abstractions to tell stories in that. I saw 1917, which is an amazing movie. A fantastic movie. But watching it, you can very much tell it's okay, it's disconnecting a little bit from the actuality, the grittiness. It still shows oh, this is some fucking horrible shit, but it's not something like Paths of Glory, where there's a whole 30-minute sequence of them just trying to break a wire in no man's land, and it's just this massive battle, and hundreds of people just fucking die. And in this, it's okay, there's a little bit of a battle, but that's a whole different thing. 1917 is a fantastic movie for very different reasons than why Platoon is a fantastic movie.
Yeah, but it's just, something the War of 1812.
Oh yeah,
that is just so far gone.
Any Civil War movie, any Revolutionary War movie, any of those.
But it's something like Vietnam, that's still very real to us. So the movies take less dramatic license than they could if Vietnam, instead of being however old it is now, 50 years old, if it was more.
Probably. Yeah, no,
it's like
right?
yeah, like mid-50s. But if the movie or like not the movie, if the war was hundreds of years old, well then nobody would freaking care if you did whatever you did with it.
You know what's gonna be crazy?
But here's the thing: because Platoon was made, and Platoon is this more realistic portrayal of Vietnam, and we have film.
Yeah,
that might never happen with Vietnam.
Yeah, you know what's gonna be weird? When we're like in our mid-50s and we start seeing like the Rambo 2 versions of the Afghanistan war.
Oh God,
I don't know if I'm ready for that.
Or like the Gulf War.
Oh Jesus Christ! I forgot there was a Gulf War.
Well, yeah, that's why there's still a Kuwait.
Oh yeah. All right.
I mean, I don't mean to make light of these things, but these things are just true.
But yeah, so Platoon, fantastic movie. But next week we're gonna do something.
Actually, can I mention something?
Oh, you have something?
Because I was a stupid kid once upon a time, didn't know nothing about nothing. I always thought when I was like a kid, like I don't know, like let's say like sub 13, I thought the Gulf War was like the Mexican Gulf.
You thought
like the Gulf, like Texas,
the Gulf of Mexico,
right, the Gulf of Mexico, because that's the only Gulf I knew of. No meme. I learned later.
Much later, right?
I learned much later, being like, oh yeah.
Wait, there's another Gulf?
There's actually quite a few of them.
Ooh, who knew?
Yep, there's also a Gulf of Tonkin.
Oh hey,
related to Vietnam.
But something not related to Vietnam is next week's movie, which is a much lighter film. It's a comedy. It's from 1935. It's a Marx Brothers flick. It's A Night at the Museum. Night at the Opera.
Not Night at the Museum.
Sorry, I thought of Tropic Thunder. Ben Stiller. Yeah. So we're going to be watching A Night at the Opera, a Marx Brothers film. I've seen it before.
So happy to be watching this movie.
Really?
I really hope it's a good 1930s comedy so I can get it off my mind that they're all gonna be shit.
You just had a really negative reaction to like Swing Time and the first half of Bringing Up Baby.
Yes.
But yeah, I've seen A Night at the Opera before. It's a fun movie.
It's one of these things where it's like, most of the movies we've seen on this list have been good from end to end. The only one that was like kind of ruined was like Sixth Sense, but that's our own prejudices about like, knowing the twist and then thinking we know everything. Which we don't.
Yeah.
We didn't.
We didn't. Still snapped Randy's soul in half.
Snapped my soul in half like Steven Seagal. But, where Swing Time and Bringing Up Baby, like Swing Time, like everything in between dance moves was like terrible. And Bringing Up Baby, like the first 15 minutes of that movie was awful.
And then it became really good when the cat showed up.
It became pretty good.
Yeah.
It kind of ramped... That movie kind of ramped up and got better and better and better towards the end.
Yeah.
Where it was kind of like you could see like they finally got in the groove of everything. Yeah, I would be very surprised to hear like that movie was filmed out of order.
I don't believe it was filmed out of order, to be honest.
No, but like I would be like awestruck.
It would blow your mind.
It would blow my mind if they were like, oh no, they filmed actually all the scenes backwards.
Randy's like, what the fuck?
What the fuck?
Well, yeah, by the end of production and the starting of shooting, they were just done with each other, right?
Oh my god, that would make so much more sense.
But yeah, so...
But, Night at the Opera, I'm so looking forward to it. Marx Brothers, it should be really good.
Have you ever seen any Marx Brothers bits?
No, I haven't. And I hope... Well, I've seen some of the bits, but I really, really, really hope it's good.
I will hope too. I've seen it before. I had a kind of a lukewarm response to it last time.
Son of a bitch.
But here's the thing. I think I had a lukewarm response to it last time because I tried to watch it as a narrative story being like unfolding. Oh. And I'm like, nah, this ain't that kind of movie. It's basically these like 3 of the best comedians of their time just riffing for 96 unbroken minutes. Basically, it's just like, they're just dropping fucking killers every 5 minutes. That's what this movie is.
And you were expecting a serious drama.
I was expecting a drama. I've never seen a Marx Brothers movie before.
You fucking stupid.
But, yeah, so you can look forward to that next week. If you wanted to catch that, you can go to any place you can find podcasts. You can find us on our Anchor.fm. You can find us on our Spotify. And you can also find us on our YouTube channel, In the Frame. That's right, In the Frame on YouTube, where you can find this podcast, The Film Odyssey, as well as the other podcast on there, the Film Club Podcast. Any last words, Randy?
Do it.
Get wrecked, nerd. Alright, everybody. You have a good week.
Have a good time.